Well,
hello, petals. All you little Buddhists, look at you. Kyume, there you go. Happy to see you, darling. Mary, hello, sweetheart. You're up late. Good, everybody. Maria, sit down, darling. Lars, hello there. Susanna. Well, good evening from Santa Fe. It's about it's 11 p.m. here, and Mary's also in Santa Fe. Oh, actually, she's nearby, so she's up. She's waited late. Look at her. Happy to see you all. Hannah, Wolfgang is up. He's in California. 10 p.m. for him. Hi, Jeremy. Hi, Jason, not Jeremy. Jason and Amy, hi, darlings.
welcome, Venerable Robina. Thank you so much for
coming. You going to say something?
Thank you very much for coming. And thank you for coming, especially so late at night and moving into your Christmas Eve to give us this special teaching. And we requested this in the tradition of Lama Yeshe's teachings to his Western students at Christmas time. And as Venerable Robina is Lama Yeshe's daughter, we hope that she can help us to integrate, because Buddhism is new to the West, and we are new to Buddhism. And so working with both of these cultures together is so important. And so thank you so much, Venerable Robina, for coming to give us this.
Okay, good job. Happy to be here. So, yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about Lama's tradition. It's true. Lama would always give a talk, actually, because there would be courses on at Kopan Monastery, all the hippies when we first started going there. Well, I didn't first start it, but soon after. And he'd always give a talk about Christmas, and he'd talk about Jesus and try and, I think, talk about the similarities. I wasn't thinking about that. What I was thinking about to talk about was how to control our mouth when we go to have Christmas dinner with our families. That would be an interesting point, I think. I mean, in America, the big deal is the big deal. I mean, Christmas is a big deal, but the big deal for them is Thanksgiving. But I think for us, our family. But maybe first of all, maybe we could mention, I don't know, Lama would always talk about the relationship between Christianity and Buddhism, but I'm not sure I want to talk about that.
Venerable Robina, can we offer a quick mandala?
We can do that. Keep it very informal. We just do quickly. We just think we're going to have this little hour, and Jason, on behalf of Zopa Noble Park, wants to offer like a requesting prayer for the teaching. So we just do a short one, Jason.
Yes.
Come on. So imagine offering all the contents of the universe to the Buddha as if we're asking the Buddha himself for the teaching. Okay.
Saji Poki Jugshing Metog Tramri Rahabling Jin Yide Gehen Padi Sangye Jingdu Mikte Uwa Yihidro Kuhunam Dak Jing La Pasho.
Yidam Guru Ratna Mandala Kam Niryatayami. Okay, good. Thank you, Jace. That's enough. Leave it off. Take it off. Yeah, right. So, yeah. Well, there's no harm in talking about Jesus Christ. I don't know. I've noticed that many people become Buddhists, often hang on, I think I turned you off. Here we go. Out of maybe being jaded by their Christian upbringing. But that was never the thing for me, actually. It was interesting. That's not quite true. When I gave up being a Catholic when I was 19, and it wasn't sort of so much I disliked my Catholic upbringing. It wasn't like that. I just think it was in 1964 actually, when I was 19, nearly 20. It was somehow, I just felt it was time to move in another direction. I wasn't really against Christianity. But what was interesting for me, though, as a Christian, as a Catholic, I was in love with God when I was little. I often talk about this. Since I was tiny, I thought about God. I thought about the meaning of life. But what was curious was I never had any thought of God being my creator. I know that was the point, but I never had that thought. So in a way, I was already really like a Buddhist, because there's so many similarities, actually. It's very interesting. I'll just talk about this briefly first. there's so many similarities between the, you know, I only really know the Catholics. I don't know other Christian views. I don't know Muslim views. I don't know Jewish views. A little bit about the Catholics. I didn't study it that deeply, but the whole concept that always interested me was this concept of this all pervade, you know, as this God is everywhere. I loved the idea of that. I never had guilt. I never had any problem with guilt, things like that. But I remember the idea, I didn't even know what words I used. I love the idea that God is everywhere. That this energy pervades the universe and is infinitely wise and infinitely compassionate and infinitely powerful. They're the three main qualities, aren't they? And it's very interesting because I often say this, but a few years ago, I gave a talk at the university in Melbourne, the Catholic University. There was some conference on, and there was a couple of other speakers, non-Christians, and I was one, and I had this 20-minute slot, you know. So I remember not knowing, even the morning I got there, not knowing what I was going to talk about. So I decided I looked up the Merriam-Webster dictionary for the definition of God. And it was interesting, of these three essential qualities: infinite compassion, infinite wisdom, infinite power. Well, I thought, well, that's interesting. They're said to be the qualities of a Buddha. So my talk was the similarities between the definition, I said, the definition of God and Buddha. That was my talk. Now, I don't know if the Christians particularly liked it, but that was what I talked about. But of course, so I've kind of felt over the years that my feeling is, when I read more and more, I study Buddhism and listen to the meaning of all these things, and it kind of is, it's been a doorway for me into understanding my Christianity. And that's not meant to insult Christianity, you know. But I've never had, I mean, for a while I did give it up. And then when I was an old radical lefty, I didn't like Christianity, didn't like religion at all. But then I know when I was about 30, I decided, 29 actually, I was really, maybe even 28, 29, I was really feeling I wanted something spiritual again. So I went back to Mass. I tried this, I tried that, nothing worked. And I did transcendental meditation. And then finally I bumped into Lama Yeshe Lama's Open. That's when I kind of found my path, you know, when I was about 31, yeah. So what I feel over the years is, it's interesting that so many, what I've been feeling over the years, the more I study the Buddhist views of the universe, you know, really Buddhism is a world view. We mightn't think it's that, but it definitely is that. We mightn't like it, and that doesn't matter, but it's said to be that, a view of the universe, you know. It's not just a method of watching your breath and feeling a bit mindful. It's rather naive to think that. But it's this vast body of knowledge about, you know, the universe, how the universe functions, what it is. Well, I mean, and so in other words, it's a philosophical view. Well, and so is Christianity. We tend to think, oh, there's religion and there's philosophy. No, they're all philosophies. What is philosophy? It's this fancy Greek word was talking about the meaning of life, you know. I mean, what else is Christianity but that? And I know, so I remember, it seems to me over the years, over the centuries of human life, humans over the years, seem in different cultures at different times, have come up with similar findings, similar observations. So, you know, if you study Buddhism, you know perfectly well that, you know, all these views about other realms of existence, and it sounds very similar to some of the Christian teachings, some of the Muslim ones. So it seems to me they're very similar observations, but different interpretations of everything. So this concept that there is an energy that's infinitely wise, compassionate, and powerful, using that word consciously, energy, Buddha agrees, you know, no problem. That's for him, but for Buddhism, it's called, Mahayana view, that's called Buddha. And and of course in Christianity it's called God. But then, you know, but we all know that the key function of God, this capital G, having those qualities, is as the creator of the universe, as the boss, basically, the person from whom the universe, the source of the universe. And this source itself had no source itself, had no cause. And for whatever reason, this energy decided to create the universe, to create me, to create the laws, the rules, and therefore, in a sense, was the boss. And then from this, we have this view of punishment and reward, which runs all the way through most people's view, it seems to me, most views of religion. If we look at it, who posit a creator. Well, that's the one radical, I mean, immense, and probably it's a sacrilegious difference. It's a very shocking concept for Christians or Muslims to think that Buddhism also asserts that energy, infinitely perfect, infinitely wise, infinitely compassionate, infinitely powerful, but does have a source and is not a creator. Buddhism doesn't assert a creator. So this is a very shocking idea for Christians and Muslims. But this is, so, you know, but this is the Buddha's view. The Buddha is this person who became a Buddha. And he said, this is what I found to be so. And every single being possesses this potential. So you could argue from this point of view, there's no concept of creator in Buddhism because we don't need creating. There's no view like that. There's no view at all. So it's quite shocking, I'd say, for Christians. But that's a very interesting concept. These three essential qualities is very interesting. But the radical difference is, as I said, but Buddhism says every single one of us has that potential. And why we don't need creating is because of the Buddhist view that talks about, you know, the mind going back, consciousness going back to beginningless time, which of course is a hilarious idea for us, you know. So there's so many similarities, and you know, so many similarities, but so many absolutely big differences. I remember one difference. I remember there were some very nice Christians, Lutherans actually, in Kathmandu many years ago when I was based there. And they came to the center and they wanted to know about Buddhism. They came to Kathmandu. So we talked about the similarities and we talked about the differences. So, you know, as we know, if we're Mahayana Buddhists, when the reason you become a Buddha, what drives you to want to become a Buddha is incredible compassion for the suffering sentient beings. And if you've become a Buddha, then you have this infinite power to be of benefit to sentient beings as long as time exists. And particularly that you want to be reborn again and again around other beings to help them. I remember this one of the fellows, he said, no, that's terrible. That's so depressing. He said, I don't want that. No way. He said, when I die, I want to go to heaven and be with God. So there's clearly differences, you know. I mean, the idea of being reborn for countless eons to benefit sentient beings is not the same as getting born in heaven with God. Quite different. So there are so many similarities, but differences. So I thought I wanted to say that. But Lama was always very sweet in the way he would talk about Jesus, you know, because many of the hippies who came along were very jaded about their Christian upbringing. And I think there's no reason to be that way. I mean, I'm grateful for my Catholic upbringing. I'm incredibly grateful. Of course, there's terrible things in churches and all the recent thing about pedophiles and everything, but you're always going to find humans who are you know, who make a mess of life. But I'm not sure that actually, you know, you're going to find people who are supposedly Buddhists who make a mess as well. But I'm not sure that necessarily means the philosophy itself is at fault, you know. So I think sometimes we go too far. So I'm enormously grateful for my Catholic upbringing. I got so much from it. There's no question. There's no question. So I wanted to say that. If you want to ask me some questions later, you're very welcome. But what I think I wanted to talk about also is how to bring Dharma, how to make Christmas dinner pleasant when you go visit your families, you know. Well, there's something I think is so simple. The advice I'm going to give is so simple, it's embarrassing. It's so simple, you think, come on, I thought you were meant to be a Buddhist. Don't you want to give us some kind of meditation? No. The advice is zip your lip. This is something very powerful in Buddhist teachings. You know, the very first level of practice, the sort of stages of practice. The very first level, it's got nothing to do with meditation yet. It's taking your grandma's advice. Behave nicely, please, Robina. Behave nicely. What do you think that means? It means you control your mouth and don't say ridiculous things. And it means control your body. So in terms of Christmas, you know, Christmas with your family, you know, is you don't kind of jump on the food and shove it in your mouth. You know, you behave nicely, but you control your mouth. The biggest problem in most families, I mean, most of us don't go around raping and killing each other. This is a fact. But what do? We make trouble with our mouths. And, you know, this is why it's something that I've heard since I first become a Buddhist, you know, but you sort of think, oh, yeah, control your mouth. But look how hard it is to control our mouths. It's almost like it doesn't seem possible. And especially if you've got this intense environment of many people coming, all the family, and you don't necessarily, you know, feel close to everybody. And then sometimes you drink alcohol, so the mouth gets loose. And look at the problems that happen, you know. I mean, I always talk about this too, and I'm trying to make all my family saints because we're not. But you know, since there are 7 of us, 7 siblings, and very, you know, many families, lots of dramas in the family. So lots of shouting and yelling, and all of us responded to the dramas in our own particular way, you know. And I mean, it can be very traumatic when you're little girls and boy, and there's 7 in our family. And my mother and father had babies so quickly, they didn't have enough money to keep up with it. And we didn't have enough beds. We used to share beds. We'd rotate sharing beds, you know. We weren't rich. Went to the fanciest convent in Melbourne. Well, not the fanciest, but one of them. I always joke that my mum still owes the bills. I was just joking. 70 years later, 60 years later, whatever, 70. Anyway, the point is, we would fight all the time. I mean, we all have our different memories of everything. And I was the bully in the family, really mean, you know, but every one of us felt overwhelmed because there was never enough space. You're always on top of each other. And that's how we tend to be with children. Put all the kids together, you know, they're all the kids, and let them all shout and yell. I mean, we're all seven individual little human beings, all with our own needs, all with our own dramas, you know. And when you're all 7 little children on top of each other, no one's listening to each other. You're just shouting and yelling or doing whatever you're doing, you know, and it can be really exhausting. So, I mean, that's we spend our lives, all these kids being together. And so as we got older, we'd fight like crazy. And then as we got older, we all did our own thing, and then we'd meet again for Christmas, and well, inevitably we might fight, you know. But I'd say but we luckily had enough harmony between us to keep us together. We've never had a schism. I mean, I hear about these breaks in families, unbelievable, sometimes into 2 groups, 3 groups, you know. And why? Not because people rape each other, but because of the mouth. And then you talk to each other on the phone, and you badmouth each other behind your backs. And we know what it's like to be badmouthed. And you talk about one sister, and you know perfectly well, if you think about it, that the other sister's going to be speaking to her about you. So we all know how painful it is to be talked about, and yet we all seem to do it. You know, we forget. It's something that seems so almost simple to say, don't talk about each other behind backs. But all I can say is, in our family, the last 20, maybe 30 years, I don't know. I mean, we never spend a lot of time together, but we're very close. We spend time together separately. And as we've gotten older, it's really become extremely harmonious between us, you know, because there's this unspoken agreement that pretty much when we are together, and we are very different people with many different philosophical views, many different approaches to different things, besides different football teams, although most of my Melbourne siblings are Sydney Swans, but Mary moved to Geelong and married a Geelong barracker. So, as you know, she's a Geelong barracker now. Anyway, the point is, we would talk about things. We've got this agreement. We will not talk about things we don't agree with when we're together. So what that means straight away is that because you're not fighting, you're finding common ground. So it's astonishing when we are together now, we have incredibly wonderful, funny times, really laughing a lot. I mean, talking about old times, remembering old times, but really harmonious. And then the other thing is, because we speak to each other on the phone, you know, or FaceTime and things like that. I speak to some more than others, but we make this conscious effort not to talk about each other behind our backs. We do not criticize. And that means there's even space now. So naturally, because we're siblings and we're very close in age, very intensely, you know, very all bossy like me, all kind of what do you call type A's, except my brother, he's more low key, and he's number 7 in the family, 6 bossy older sisters. Somehow we even praise each other, even rejoice, you know, and that's not, it's difficult to do in families sometimes. It's incredible rivalry. I mean, I hear incredible things from people about families, you know. So, but somehow so we've allowed this harmony to grow. And I'm not trying to say we're saints, absolutely not. But it's really quite extraordinary, you know, and that's not because we're sitting there meditating. No, it's because we kind of, each of us is giving the example to each other to control the mouth. I honestly can't stress this enough. You know, we do these meditations at our center in Santa Fe. We have morning meditation, 7 o'clock, 5 mornings a week. And I lead one of them. In fact, I'm leading tomorrow mornings in about 6.5 hours. And I've decided to do the speech one again, because, you know, for everyone for Christmas, we need it. There's this lovely meditation where you visualize this and you recite the sounds of the Sanskrit syllables, which is what makes up the mantras. And mantras are said to be very powerful, you know. So it's a sweet little meditation. It sounds so cute where you're visualizing, purifying, or you're purifying, and you're reciting these mantras which are said to be blessing your speech. And because speech is so powerful. We never think of it like this. We never think this way. You think about your speech. We need it in life. It's so distressing, for example, we see if someone doesn't believe our words. We know if you work for people, you've got a job. You've got a job and you're a boss and nobody respects your words. How, or you're not a boss, but you've got colleagues and you're at a meeting and you're a bit nervous and people just don't listen to your words. There's nothing more distressing than this. So there's something, it's really, we know that speech is incredibly important in our lives just to get things done. You go into a shop and you can't get, someone keeps not serving you, you get upset. Or, people think you're lying when you're not lying. We all know this happens. People accuse you of saying things you didn't do. There's some kind, for example, the view of karma, I've got this, I've got a very loud, bossy voice. So there's some people, even if you're speaking nicely, people think you're being bossy. I'm one of those for sure. I just have to open my mouth and people think I'm being abusive or bossy. So we can have this. So we can see that there's nothing more distressing than not having your speech heard or not being believed or not being respected, And that's a particularly female thing. We know that. So there's something very powerful about this very first level of practice in Buddhism, where you learn to control your body and you control your speech. And what does control your body mean? Well, at Christmas, it means don't drink too much, please, because you're just going to vomit. You'll upset everybody, and then then your mouth will be uncontrolled, and then you'll be in a complete mess. And the next day, you won't even remember what you did, and you wonder why your family don't talk to you. I mean, this seems sort of corny, silly things, When you think about Buddhism, you think about meditating. Well, you can't. How can you possibly control your mind? How can you learn to see your thoughts, which indeed is the point about being a Buddhist? Be your own therapist, as Lama Yeshe puts it. How can you see what you're thinking? How can you learn to control your mind? How can you really learn to meditate if you can't control your body and speech? It's sort of obvious. The body and speech are like the servants of the mind, aren't they? But our tragedies in our culture, and I talk about this a lot, the tragedy in our culture, because we don't necessarily have approaches similar to the Buddhist one, where you have a practice in the day where you learn to be conscious of what you're thinking. You learn to be conscious of your thoughts and feelings before they vomit out the mouth. Our trouble is we don't even know what we're feeling until they're vomiting out the mouth. Oh, I just realized I must be angry. Listen to me shouting. So it's not just corny, it's profound. And there are lots of practices where you learn to discipline your body, discipline your speech. Then you can really learn to know your mind. Then you can really learn to unpack and unravel, isn't it? The contents of your mind. See what on earth is going on inside you, so you can start to unpack and so start to change your mind, which of course is the essence of the Buddhist approach, But you can't just leap into changing your mind. It's not possible. The commonest thing people say, oh, I tried to meditate, because we've got these fairly cliched views of what meditation is, somehow to make all the thoughts go away or something. No, the Buddhist view is long term, we've got incredible capacity for control over our mind. Absolutely, But we've got to start somewhere. And I know when I first became a Buddhist, because I'm kind of volatile, loudmouth, but, busy, I wanted Buddhism. I liked the idea of Buddhism. I liked the Buddhist approach. When I first heard the teachings from Lama Zopa Lama Yeshe, when I was like 31, I liked this approach. I couldn't understand much of it. It seemed rather arcane, but I liked very much this approach. I felt like all my life, in fact, I hadn't realized it. Even when I first went to Mass, I was a Catholic, very devoted. It was more like I was a Buddhist then, in a sense. It's kind of interesting. So when I heard the Buddhist teachings, I was really liked very much. But when I heard about meditation, just instinctively, the idea of sitting down, we tried to do it. We did it at the course of our course with Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa, but sitting down with your eyes closed, trying to be still. It just almost, it seems ridiculous. I was 31. I wasn't free, It just seemed like I'm not interested in that. I'm very sorry. I do not want to know about meditation. Which seems kind of naive almost for people, because you think, well, being a Buddhist means meditating. Yeah, I wanted to know my mind, that's for sure. But with my eyes open while I was walking, I can handle my mind then, So it took me a while to begin to really get into enjoying certain kinds of meditation techniques. But absolutely, and often you notice it among Tibetans in the Tibetan monastic universities with children, because in Tibet it was very medieval. They didn't have many schools. Now it's more like modern world. But if you were going to get educated, you were a monk or a nun, you were sent to a monastery. That was just the way it was. You wore the little robes. You didn't become a fully ordained monk until you're older, and then you could choose. But that's where you got education. But they didn't learn meditation. They learned all the prayers. They learned all the different teachings. And only as you got older did you learn to meditate. Because I mean, it's quite. But there's some kind of cliched idea in the West that if you're a Buddhist, you must meditate. It's some kind of secret thing. But it's rather kind of simplistic and rather naive, actually. It's not like that. So that's a couple of things I had to say. I think I need you to ask me some questions, you people. Jamie's up. Jamie, it's a bit early for you, honey. Jamie's up. He's in London. 6:30. He's in England. Never mind. He's up. Okay. So the Australians are up. I'm up and he's up. Okay. You folks, come on. Ask me some questions. Guilherme, what about you? Got any questions?
If you have questions, you can just unmute yourself and ask a question, or you can ask it in the chat and Amy will ask it.
Ask me some questions. I talked about Wolfgang. You were the one. He's in California. We had a conversation. He said he really liked it, the way we talk about some of the Christian Buddhist connections. So tell me, do you have any thoughts about that, Wolfgang, or have anything to say or ask questions about that?
Yeah, what I like very much is really the similarity that all the religion point to the same direction.
You feel they do. I would disagree with that, but I would say there's a lot of similarity, but not necessarily pointing in the same direction. I'm not sure I'd agree with that, Wolfgang. You think they do? I mean, remember what I said before? When the Christians, when he's heard the Mahayana view that you work life after life, I was telling him that we Buddhists work life after life after life, being reborn again and again and again out of compassion for sentient beings. And he said, no, that's terrible. I don't want that. When I die, I want to go to heaven with God. Now they're two very different views, aren't they? That's a difference, isn't it? Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah. So today or tomorrow, we celebrate the rebirth of Jesus Christ. He's reborn again.
Who does? Who celebrates that? The Christians.
I'm celebrating. Yeah, tomorrow.
Well, you
tomorrow.
are. Okay, well, you can do that.
I'm celebrating the rebirth. So each year, it's really fascinating. Each year when the night is darkest, when the night is the most darkest, when the night is darkest, then Jesus Christ, the light, is reborn into the world.
That makes you like that idea.
Yeah, yeah.
Perfect.
It's really dark.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Nothing wrong. Thank you, Wolfgang. Anybody else anything to say or points to ask me? Nothing?
Venerable Robina.
Yes, darling.
Jason here. What about, you've talked about keeping our mouth shut at Christmas dinner. What about the other part where we're sitting there at Christmas dinner with our mouth shut, sort of seething a little bit sometimes at the people around the table, or even just, picking, like our mind is, kind of
finding fault, basically, finding fault, and you're trying to shut up. Well, then that's the next level of practice. At least you control your mouth, but don't be passive aggressive about it. There's nothing more horrible than a person around Christmas lunch who refuses to open their mouth because they're looking like they're because they're bored to tears. No, this is really what we've really got to, the ideal scenario is to shut your mouth and not argue, but to be and maybe the bigger practice is just think that you're there for others. This is very hard for us. Think that you're there for others. If it's your mum's house, if it's your grandma's house, if it's your sister's house and the family there, it's a big practice. You've got to prepare for it, but just make a decision. First of all, you've decided, this is really kind of grown up. You've decided you're going to go to that auntie's house. You've decided you're going to go. So if you've decided to go, you don't feel like a victim. Oh God, I've got to go to Christmas lunch. If you think that way, you're in big trouble. You're really much better to be brave enough to say you won't go. So part of our problem is we become passive aggressive and we decide we're going to go to Christmas lunch at aunties or grandma's and we know who's going to be there and we never see them except for once a year. So then that's a disaster. You've got to really be big and brave minded and decide if you're going to go and you're going to be there for other people. Be kind, help with the dishes, ask auntie how she is, let them all rabbit on, let them talk about all the things they want to talk about, let your old white supremacist uncle say what he wants to say. It's not easy. This is actually very difficult. So zipping your lip is the first one, but then even bigger than that is look at your own mind and make a decision that I've decided to go, so I'm going to be there for them and just be nice. It's really hard, but it's not enough just to zip your lip and be passive aggressive. That's no good. And to sit there seething is because you really haven't chosen to be there. And if you choose to be there, you just be kind. You're going to stay for a couple of hours. You give yourself over for those 2 hours. When you decide to do that, everything changes. But to sit there and be repressed and seething, that's a nightmare, because that gives such a bad vibe, you know, doesn't it? Do you understand? That's tough. That's hugely important. That's the best way to be. You just be there for others, and you be kind, and you talk to people, you enjoy yourself, you thank them for their kindness, and you enjoy. And the word's so easy to do, but my goodness, that's massive if we can do that. What do you think, people? That's a good idea, don't you think? Oh, look, there's Jane. They're my family there. Hello, Jane Osborne. This is my family. What's our relationship? I forget. What's our relationship?
Hi, Venerable Robina. Mark is your relative.
Hi,
Oh,
Robina.
Mark. So that's Mark in front of me. But what relative? What level? I forget.
We're cousins.
Are we cousins?
Yes.
How? Which side? Which? I'm very. Julie would know. Julie knows all the families.
Yes.
I get a bit confused.
I think it's on,
Mum's side, isn't it?
yeah,
my mum's side, of
grandmother's
course.
side.
The Australian side, because my dad is from London, so that's different. So that's right. So how come I'm so happy to see? Because I heard from you recently, didn't I, Jane, on Facebook?
You did. It's so lovely that you responded, Venerable Robina. We're really, really happy to be here.
Good. I'm so glad.
You.
Darling, I'm so happy. I wish I could be. I haven't been to Christmas for a long time in Australia, because
Yeah.
every year I go to our centre in France and I do a week's retreat, which I'm going to be doing again, starting on the 26th. But maybe one year I'll come home for Christmas.
We'll see then.
Yes, exactly.
Our youngest son, Patrick's very interested in Buddhism, so
Okay.
as are we. So we're just
Very interesting. That's very curious.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Well, anyway, this is Jason, and up there, Jason and Amy, they got a little group in Noble Park. Where do you live?
Lovely.
Where do you guys live?
We're in Ballarat,
Oh, okay. Yeah, right. Of course.
a bit
Anyway,
further west.
a bit further west. Yeah, that's right. But Jason and Amy run a few little things. They started as a small group in Melbourne. We've got other centres there. Anyway, so good with Zoom these days. We can do all sorts of things. And I'm
So
doing quite
good.
yeah.
here with some teachings for sure. They're very nice. Great. Who else has got something to say? Anybody else? Any questions?
We've got a question here from Gurmay.
Okay, good.
And
That's the one there. She's in New South Wales.
so I'll read it, but Venerable Gurmay, if you'd like to clarify, I'm not sure. She said, how do you tie in the loving kindness of Buddhism with Christianity, Jesus's teachings? Any comment?
Well, that's where the similarities are. I mean, there's differences in the philosophical views of what happens to you and what you can become. But that is, I think that's the, and I would, that there, I think Wolfgang would agree. That's the absolute certainty where the similarities are. There's no question. I mean, if we look at any, I mean, certainly the Christian teachings, they're absolutely all about that. I mean, that's for sure. Of course, I mean, were you brought up a Christian, Guillaume? Were you brought? Oh, yes, she was. She was a nun. That's right. She was a Catholic nun for a while. Tell us about your experience, Guillaume. Tell us about the similarities. You got to unmute yourself, babe. That's it. Tell us what you did. Tell us what you did, darling. Can't hear you, sweetie pie. I can't hear you, darling. You got to put your volume up. She can't do it. Guillaume, don't give up.
You might need to unplug your headphones. If you unplug your headphones, that might help.
And pull out the cord. And now she's disappeared. Guillaume, come on, where are you? Put your volume up. You can't do it? Oh, sweetheart. Never mind.
Venerable Robina, there was a little bit more in Gurmay's question.
Good. What you say?
So she said the emphasis in Christianity seems to be more on the doing and Buddhism on the thinking. This part.
Well, that's interesting. Well, what does Guillaume think the bodhisattva path is if it's not the doing? I'm not going to say it's So what about the Bodhisattva path, Gyume? Can you hear me, Gyume? Just nod. Okay. So the Bodhisattva path is, what do you think bodhicitta is? It's not just thinking, that's doing, helping others. Don't you think that, Gyume? There you go. Life after life after life. Never give up. But maybe what she's meaning is because, you know, certainly in Mahayana Buddhism, Tibetan Buddhism, there's this big tradition of the monastic universities where you study for like 25 years, you know, and it looks like sometimes people think of Buddhism as sitting there watching your navel all day. And it looks like it's being very selfish. And so because there's different levels in Buddhism, this is the thing I think gets a bit confusing in the world. There's different levels of practice. You know, this analogy I always use, a bird needs two wings. Well, the wisdom wing is, you know, the cliched view of a Buddhist sitting there quietly walking, you know, with their begging bowl and sitting there meditating in the forest or in the mountains. That's the first part of practice. That's where the wisdom wing is. That's where you put yourself together. That's where you learn to control your body, you control your speech, you live in vows of good ethics, you unpack and unravel your mind, and you develop this incredible potential that Buddha says we've all got to completely develop our mind to the most astonishing degree of clarity and brilliance. And get rid of delusions, get rid of anger and depression and jealousy, and get rid of harming others. So that's the wisdom wing. And that is the idea that people have of Buddhism and just being meditating, you know. But then the Mahayana one, then you've got the compassion wing. And once you've achieved some level of clarity and lessening your neurosis in your own mind, then you're capable of getting out there and helping others. And that's the compassion wing. And you know, and that's where you, in fact, the Buddhist view is you go life to life to life, constantly benefiting others. That's exactly the point. But the Buddhist idea is you can't benefit others until you put yourself together. If you're caught up in your own misery and attachment and anger and jealousy and low self-esteem and depression, you can't ever fly. You know, you're useless. You can't see past your own nose. So we've got to do the wisdom wing first. That's the one that we can miss. Gyume perhaps is suggesting that then looks like it's just all inside your own head, you know. But that's necessary first. Then you can do the compassion wing. There's no question. And that's finally the point, you know. What else, people?
It looks like Eleanor maybe had a question.
Good,
Eleanor,
Eleanor.
question?
Good. Talk to me, darling.
You just need to unmute yourself, Eleanor.
Right.
Hello, sweetheart.
Hi. I just wanted to say that for quite a while I was using, I too come from a Catholic background and a very large family, and also spent many years in a convent. So
right. I remember you telling us. Tell us about that, Eleanor. What kind of nun were you?
I went in when I was about 15.
What kind of nun were you?
A Catholic nun.
What kind of order? What was the order of nuns?
Pédiceux des Pauvres.
Oh, I don't know them.
Yeah, they're in France as well. They're a French order.
Okay, wonderful. You were a nun since you were 15.
I left home at that age, yes, and I came out when I was in my 30s.
So tell us about that then.
I don't know what to tell you.
Tell us why you're a Buddhist then.
Because I've always been a seeker, and I think ever since, like, I have similarities. Like as a kid, I always had, I was always seeking for a path of peace, actually, and a path of non-fear, of non-guilt. And I know in Catholicism there's huge guilt and huge fear, you know, like fear of doing the wrong thing and fear of going to hell and those sorts of things. But I know that one thing that I've been really interested in, and when I was in Copan, I read a book on that Jesus was a Buddhist, you know, that there was a book written and by, I think he was a German guy, I'm not sure. But I was really interested in the similarities in like the parables, and also in especially the Sermon on the Mount, for example. It reminded me very much of Shantideva, you know, like giving to the poor and
exactly.
all of those things. So that, because for a while I couldn't reconcile the two.
I understand that. Interesting, isn't it, Eleanor? My feeling is I think we can say Buddhism, we can say Christianity, but it's not a single thing. It's a question of who you meet. It's a question of the interpretation, and I think it's a question of the level of the person. Some people can be very fundamentalist and very narrow-minded. I mean, you hear some Christians talk, it sounds like the worst, most shocking, concrete views you've ever had. And you listen to other Christians who are really highly advanced, amazing beings, you know. I mean, this is where it's marvelous. I don't know, there's one book that you might be interested in, Eleanor. It's actually, there's some Catholics in London years ago, I think in the 90s, they invited some Catholic priests, some group of Catholics invited the Dalai Lama to give commentary on the Gospels, and they've been published. I think, have you seen that book by the Dalai Lama? It's called The Good Heart or something, and it's him. And I remember reading in London in the Catholic press the news report about that retreat, and it was incredibly moving, apparently, having these Christians hearing their own teachings coming from the perspective of the Dalai Lama. So then you could argue that Shantideva and the Bodhisattva teachings and the Christian teachings, yes, according to who gives them, it's the level of the person and the level of the interpretation, I think, that makes all the difference. Do you understand?
Yes, I do. Yeah. Yes, I do.
And I remember this Dalai Lama with many retreats. And I remember one time when I was in London as a nun, and I led a retreat, and it was like in the late 70s. And there was a Catholic nun there from the Religious of the Sacred Heart. I went to the Sacré-Cœur nuns, the Religious of the Sacred Heart. It's French order as well. And we have schools in Australia. There's one in Melbourne, there's one in Sydney, one in Brisbane. And I remember this nun, she was older, she was like my age now. She was in her 70s then, and I was in my 30s. And she did a retreat with us, and she was so moved, and I put her into a retreat and gave her practices to do, and she had a blissful time. She said she got so much from the whole approach in Buddhism. She said we don't talk about the psyche, she said, but she was always a Catholic, and she got a lot from those teachings that enhanced her own Catholic upbringing. So I think everything's a question of level. And I would say, finally, the fundamental difference, if you want to look at the simple technical differences in Christianity and Buddhism, it has to be the differences. One says a creator and the other says not. That has to be a major difference. That you can never sort of gloss over, you know. But in terms of the philosophies, in terms of the approaches, there's so much similarities. Of course there are, because the human beings are so similar, you know. There's no question in my mind about that. But I know for me, I mean, my reasons for being a Buddhist, I don't know, different from yours perhaps. I just knew it wasn't what I wanted in Christianity. I gave it up, and I was searching in all sorts of ways, including political ways, to find answers to the suffering of the world. And then I just stumbled across these Buddhists. And then since that time, when I was 30, 31, that's been the philosophy that sort of suited my mind, you know. It suited my mind.
I've sought the truth through different other avenues as well, you know, like through energy, also through transcendental meditation, all sorts of different things. But when I went to one retreat, because I have a nursing background and I work with death and dying, and I went to one of the Buddhist retreats at Mahamudra, and that was on death and dying, and that's where I started, and that's where I started to think differently.
I see.
Yeah, so that was, and it's just grown from that. It's not an easy process. It hasn't been easy.
We need to have integrity to keep looking, don't we?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. But I'm very happy.
So whereabouts in New Zealand are you?
I live in a little place called Live-In, which is a rural area.
Okay.
It's a rural, and the order is the order that I was in. There's a home in Melbourne. You know, it's got the Little Sisters of the Poor.
Oh yeah, I know them. Of course, yes, exactly. I know them.
Yeah.
Good.
Care for the elderly.
That's it, right? Wonderful. Good, Eleanor. Fantastic, darling. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
What else, people? Anything else? Maria, I struggle with what, Maria? Talk to us. Tell us. Speak out loud. Maria's in Adelaide, somewhere in Adelaide, near Adelaide.
Near Adelaide. Just walking down the street, talking with family, just the whole mind, you know, oh, I don't like this, oh, I don't like that, oh, you know, I don't like what they said. How do we...
You mean other people always being negative, you mean?
Me being negative.
Or you being negative?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, not always, but, you know, walking down the street and seeing something, oh, you know, an ugly tattoo or...
Oh, okay, that you mean just normal daily life, Maria?
Normal daily life.
No, that's the normal world. And the trouble is, in our world, we think it's normal and usual, and it's like a normal human being to go around not liking things. But then we wonder why we get depressed and wonder why we want to shout and yell, because it's simply called anger. And then we think, you mean I've got to be like Pollyanna? No, it's got to not naive like that. It's learning to see. The key thing, I think, Maria, is forget about, oh, you shouldn't be angry with anybody. You should say nice words. Yeah, nice. It's a nice theory. But I think the very first step, and I'm sure you agree with this, the very first step, the Buddhist approach is forget about the harm your anger does to others when it comes out the mouth eventually. But when we can start to realize our own angry thoughts, what do you think they're doing to ourselves?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the point. We're always finding fault. I mean, this is why I think we're so, in our world, so disconnected from ourselves, that we have the view that, well, I'm allowed to be angry. I'm allowed to have an opinion. Well, of course we are. No one's saying we shouldn't. But when we hear, oh, you shouldn't be angry, we hear it as punitive. We hear it as if somebody's trying to suffocate us. But the whole Buddhist approach is if we have any intelligence and we start to see the result within ourselves of our own thoughts, that's the revelation. And then who would want to have negative thoughts? But I mean, we don't think like that in our culture, because we hear it as you shouldn't be, and we think we'll get punished. So then we think, well, I'm allowed to think what I like. Of course we're allowed to think what we like, but we don't see that. We don't see what it does to us. And I think this is something Lama Zopa, I always quote this, and it sounds pretty shocking. He said, the vast majority of people on the planet have absolutely no idea that what goes on in their own mind plays any role at all in their life. So hear that point. That's the point, I think. Now, even super intelligent, super good people actually feel that, you know. I mean, it's just normal. We think it's okay, and we think it's, I'm allowed to be angry. I'm allowed to have negative thoughts. Yes, of course we are. And why, I think, Maria, why we say I'm allowed to is because when we hear people being strict, saying, don't do this and you're not allowed to do this, we think that sort of people are trying to suffocate us. We think it's like a policeman, or it's like God telling you not what to do. But it's not like that. When we realize the harm, when we realize, not the harm, the impact upon ourself of our own thoughts, that's the essence of the Buddhist approach, because we, by our thoughts, create the person we become. So when we realize this, then of course we want to change our mind. You know, it's very simple.
I just find myself being a hypocrite because I'm trying to be good.
I know. Well, it just takes time, Maria. I mean, we're not hypocrites. That's like saying you go play tennis on the first day and you're a hypocrite because you just said you went to play tennis. Well, you're a failure. You didn't play tennis, but you can't say you didn't try. So it's a process, and it's okay. If you're not making an effort, then you are a hypocrite. But all I think it shows is, where we should be very humble with ourselves, it takes time, because we're very habituated we're very deeply habitual creatures, you know. That's it. I mean, that's the point, you know, we just got to be patient. But I think the first thing is the crucial point in Buddhism, because in Buddhism, there's no concept of a creator. Therefore, there has to be logically no view of punishment and reward. And that's the view we come from. What do you mean I'm not allowed to be angry? I'm allowed to be angry, because we want to go against the idea of someone punishing and rewarding. But in Buddhism, there's no concept of a punisher and a rewarder. But this is even ourselves. We put ourselves down. We criticize ourselves. You beat yourself up for being angry, because that's the dualistic view of ego. That's the way ego is. It's just dualistic in its nature. And we don't need to have God or mummy tell us don't do something. We are good at doing it ourselves. We love to tell ourselves not to do something, and we hear it as punitive and we hear it as heavy. That's the big mistake. Yeah. So we've got to be kind to ourselves and point out, yeah, you're not a hypocrite. It takes time to practice, Maria. So you be kind to yourself. You know, this is
so just hear the judgments, hear the thoughts, and purify as much as possible.
Even before you do that, you just go, God, look, here I go again. So, Maria, give it a break, mate. Look what you're doing. Yeah. Just kind of like back off, Maria. Give it a break, girl, but not to beat yourself up. not to
No.
get guilty and neurotic. Just know how habits are very deep.
Mhm.
That's the area.
Yeah.
That's all practice is. It's like if you're playing the piano, you just keep it, you have to be watching like a hawk. And every time you play the wrong note, you don't beat yourself up. That's the point. You don't abuse yourself and shout and yell at yourself. You just go, okay, I've got to play this right note. And you just keep practicing. That's what
Yeah.
practice means, Maria. If we knew already how to be not angry, we wouldn't need to practice. So practice is a process, and it's an unfolding. It's an unfolding, and it's a practice of developing you, turning yourself into this marvelous person. But we've got to be very reasonable in that process, reasonable with ourselves.
Okay.
You understand? We've internalized don't this and don't that since we're born. So we've got to get rid of that one. But it doesn't mean you throw the baby out the bathwater. You need to be assessing yourself. You need to be watching your mind like a hawk because you're sick of suffering. That's the reason you want to change. Then eventually it'll be because you don't want others to suffer. One step at a time. It's like compassion for yourself first. And it's a really massive one. It's a common one, Maria. It's how we all are, you know.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you, darling.
Thank you.
What else, people? Why maybe we'll do a little tiny meditation. I haven't got the mantra. We can't do the meditation. We'll just do some meditation. I think we'll finish with a little meditation. Okay. We've got 7 minutes to go. How about that? Do a little simple little meditation. So just be very natural. You just close your eyes, keep your body comfy. Don't get all holy. And I think we imagine. So imagine first, keep it very simple. We just imagine filling ourselves completely. Imagine just, okay, the Buddha, if you can try and imagine enlightened energy out there, visualize it how you like, and pour white light in front of us, or above our crown, okay, this enlightened energy, think of it as Buddha. And then first of all, white light pours from him into us. Or think of it as Tara, the female Buddha, if you like. Yeah, put Tara up there, this blissful, radiant female Buddha. And you imagine, first of all, she sends white light that enters your crown and fills you completely. And just imagine this, and imagine what it does is purifies all the nonsense of our body. You know, we're very uncontrolled with our bodies. You know, we shove too much cake in. You know, we mightn't go around raping and killing, like I said, you know, but maybe we kill the ants and do dumb things with our body. So just imagine this white light is completely filling us and purifying all the actions of our body, all the nonsense we do with our bodies, our uncontrolled bodies. We can't control our bodies, especially when it comes to food, I think, or maybe alcohol, things like that, which means we become uncontrolled. But imagine it completely purifies, just full of this blissful white light, filling you with really, just imagine the potential for disciplined body. You know, Christmas lunch, I know it sounds funny, but Christmas lunch or Christmas dinner or New Year's Eve dinner, whatever you do, and, you know, you're gonna be just cautious. Not gonna shove just shove it all in. You're gonna be mindful and control your body and feel full of this energy of control body, like you're grown up, you can do it, you know. Just your body, full of this blissful white light, purifying your actions of your body, giving you kind of ethical behavior of the body, just the body. Full of this white light, purifying you. And then imagine from the same Buddha above our crown, this radiant red light filling us completely. And this red light, this is purifying our speech, the big major one, you know, the speech. Filling us with just purifying all the uncontrolled speech, the urge to say negative things, to harm people with our speech. So especially if we're going to be around family and many people we mightn't always spend time with. Control our speech, you know, because once the words are out of the mouth, the damage is done. It's very hard to forget those words, you know. So full of this blissful red light, imagine it's completely controlling our speech, and filling us with the ability to say useful words, kind words, thankful words. Just be kind to your mother, be kind to the grandmother, be kind to your auntie, be kind to your ugly old cousin, be kind to the kids, trying to say nice words. But it demands a decision, you know, it won't happen naturally. So we make the decision. If I'm going to speak, I'm going to say nice words, useful words. Try praising people. How about that? Try praising somebody. Just saying positive words to somebody. Praising somebody, thanking somebody. This is unbelievable. Just to hear some thank you words from somebody is so blissful. We know that. So feel full of this radiant red light, filling you with this capacity to not say rubbish words and to say positive, useful, kind, beneficial words. So powerful. So now we imagine from the Buddha above us, just imagine very relaxed, sending radiant beams of blue light. This completely fills us. And this time, now, this is fixing our mind, Maria's angry thoughts, negative thoughts, you know, the thoughts themselves. Because if we can control our body and speech more, we're going to be more conscious of our thoughts, because the body and speech are the servants of our mind, aren't they? So imagine now your mind full of this blissful blue light, getting rid of all the rubbish, angry thoughts, negative thoughts, annoyed thoughts, frustrated thoughts, irritated thoughts, attachment thoughts, especially when you're around other people, the angry ones, annoyed ones, irritated ones, and just filling your mind. Try to be kind. Think of kindness, you know, loving. Do your best, you know, kind, patience, kindness. We've all got this. This is the potential of every being. So know we've got this. So especially if it's tomorrow and you're going to go for lunch, everyone's different, whatever your life's going to be. But make this powerful decision now today with this little practice, this 5-minute practice. You're going to watch your body like a hawk. You're going to watch your speech and even say positive things, and you're going to watch your mind. And if your mind is not happy and you've got negative thoughts, at least you don't say them. At least you don't act them. That's the powerful point, you know. Make this strong decision. You've still got a few hours left today. I don't know. Some people have meals, don't they? Don't they have lunch? Don't people have family meals in the evening, Christmas Eve? But it's going to be lunchtime. It's going to be lunch tomorrow. Just make this decision. Control your body, control your speech, and control your mind, and even have positive thoughts and positive speech and positive actions, like serve somebody else before yourself. That's your body. To just shove the food in, that's your body. Don't be greedy, that's your body. Control the speech. Don't say the negative thoughts, but say the positive ones, and watch your mind like a hawk. And if you're going to be there for 2 hours, just decide, they've got me for 2 hours. I'll be there for their sake. And then you can go home with a happy mind because you did a good job and you can rejoice. That's it. My clock says 0, 0, 0. Okay.
Thank you so much, Venerable Robina. I feel like, you know, it's so encouraging, filling us with the courage to be able to take, I like that when you said, you've got this. I feel like, you know, we've got this. And so for
Jason's with his mum, so they're already okay. That's mum right, and that's Jason on the left. So he's okay with his mum. They get along well. Good on you.
We'll have our moments.
Good.
But,
Okay.
so we will be putting this, the video of this is going to go up on YouTube. So
Good.
the meditation there is going to be easily accessible when you're in the car, just before you go into the house. You can do this meditation and then be ready to go in and come back out in 2 hours.
And imagine how better you'll feel if you control your body and speech. You'll be so happy with yourself. And even your mind, Maria. Okay, darlings, Janchub Sepog Rinpoche, Makie Panam Ke Guchi Ke Pa Nyampa Me Pa Yang, Gong Ne Gong Du Gaba Shog. May compassion grow and grow in the hearts of all.